You are listening to Passing Shots with Pete Zebron on the Pro 10 Radio Network, a production of Pro 10 Global Sports. Enjoy the show.
And good evening and welcome to Passing Shots on the Pro 10 Radio Network. Today is Monday, February 23rd. Pete Zebron of Tennis Acumen, joined by Jared Pine of the Second Serve. Good evening, Jared.
Hey, Pete, here we go. Last week of the February grind, then we have some Davis Cup and Indian Wells, so there's some exciting stuff in the tennis season.
Really is. We had a 500 last week in Rio de Janeiro, a couple of 250s, Marseille, France, and here in the United States, Delray Beach. Probably one of the bigger stories coming out of last week, Jared, Rafael Nadal, beaten in the semifinals by Fabio Fognini, but in his quarterfinal match, due to just about every match going the distance in Rio on the men's and women's sides, Rafael Nadal takes the court at about 2 a.m. In Rio de Janeiro. Lost the first set to Pablo Cuevas, who we talked about last week, playing some good ball, and then he got through that match eventually, but lost to Fabio Fognini. I believe it was 52 consecutive semifinals on clay that Rafael Nadal had won. Fognini, really, Nadal was all business in the first set against Nadal, but late in the second set, Jared, Nadal called for a time violation by Jair Carlos Bernardes, and then again, and Nadal didn't seem to be the same player after that, and Fognini, on a beautifully executed match point, got the job done and won that match. Couple of thoughts about Rafael Nadal. He's been wobbling a little bit in Rio, and overall, your thoughts on Nadal, who's in Buenos Aires this week, but what can we expect from Nadal not only this week, but going into the U.S. hardcourt season in Indian Wells and Miami?
Yeah, when he lost to Berdych, I think a lot of people weren't too worried. They were happy just to see him in the quarterfinals of a slam. And we said, the real test is when he's on clay. Well, okay, here's the first real test. And, even in that Bellucci match, I didn't think he played that well. I didn't see that much of the match with Carreño Busta. But then he goes 3 sets with Pablo Cuevas before getting knocked out by Fabio Fognini. So obviously not a great week for him. There's still more questions about him physically and just overall where his game is at right now. But a great win for Fabio Fognini, and obviously the craziness of starting a match at 2 a.m. It's not ideal, and there's nothing that tournament directors could have done about that. I don't think you put Nadal in an outer court. Because he is the main attraction of that tournament. There's no name at that tournament nearly as big as his on the men's or women's side. Just some craziness there, and ends up, that probably cost him a little bit when he's playing against Fognini.
I would agree. Absolutely, that's a very late start. You look at some of the U.S. Open late night drama, early morning drama in New York, and of course the Baghdatis Hewitt match in Australia that started very, very late and finished very late as well. But Jared, Nadal was the defending champ there in Rio. He did not defend, obviously, losing to Fognini in the semis. And when we wake up today, Nadal is number 4 in the rankings. Murray just ahead of him at 3, and he's got Nishikori nipping at his heels for the number 4 slot. And we talked about this a couple shows ago. Nadal has a lot of points to defend. I think he's got the final in Miami and Rome, which are Masters 1000 events, and then he won Masters 1000 in Madrid, and of course Roland Garros. That's a heck of a lot of points coming up, and if, as you mentioned, a lot of questions with Rafa. If he's not able to answer those to his standards, he might free fall a little bit in the rankings. Your thoughts there?
Yeah, he's going to free fall in the rankings. It's pretty inevitable at this point. He's playing Buenos Aires this week, a 250 tournament when there's 2 500s going on. So sticking to the clay, even at the risk of, missing out on a chance to win more ranking points. But he has a ton to defend, and, I kind of think you look at that 11th spot, that's probably where he could be after Roland Garros. There's a big gap between 11 and 12, so I think dropping any lower than 11 seems unlikely. I don't think Sung is going to pass Nadal in the rankings, but I think at this point right now, Roland Garros is a long ways away. But if Nadal's sitting at number 11, I wouldn't be surprised, just because he has so much to defend, and he really has to play as well as he did last year, which seems very unlikely at this point, just to remain in the top 5. And the gap between 5 and 11 right now is very small. So a lot of trouble Nadal's in right now, I think. His last chance to really gain points on his ranking is at Indian Wells in a couple weeks. So a lot of pressure on him to perform well there. Otherwise, he's going to be in some trouble. And, even if he does do well there, I think he's still in some trouble. Things just aren't looking good for Nadal right now. But really, that's a problem more, I think, for Djokovic, Federer, and Murray, even Nishikori, because now they don't have the guarantee of avoiding Nadal in the early rounds of Madrid, Rome, and Roland Garros, and then eventually Wimbledon after that. They could be facing him pretty early on at some of those tournaments, which is both scary and exciting.
I agree. We had the same sort of conversation with Wawrinka, who's now at number 7. But he's you never know which Stan is going to show up, and you might see him very early on in a major draw as well. So very interesting to see what happens with Nadal going forward. And as you mentioned, an opportunity for him at Indian Wells to gain back some of those points that he's going to have to defend going forward. How about Ferrer? Jared, this was his 23rd career title. He's 32 years old. He's going to be 33 in April. He just keeps going and won the title very easily over Fognini. All credit to Fognini. I mean, taking out Nadal in the semi is one of the best wins of his career outside of some title wins. But David Ferrer, very easily, I believe it was 2-3 over Fognini. And this is just somebody who keeps going and going, and I just want to give a shout-out to David Ferrer. I want to get your thoughts possibly on Ferrer, but also concurrently, how about Pablo Cuevas, who we talked about last show, got his 3rd title in the last 8 months last week, and then obviously took the first set off Nadal. Is this 3 titles on clay? Obviously, he was seeded 27th at the Australian and lost very early, but we're here. We're coming into the clay court season. The Masters 1000's on clay. Your thoughts? Do you think Pablo Cuevas could be a long shot, or even a dark horse, not to win Roland Garros, but to take some guys out along the way?
After the run Gulbis made last year, I think we could see a similar run from Cuevas. But I think quarterfinals, semifinals, that's as far as he can get. Obviously, right now he's the most successful clay court specialist on tour. Incredible what he's doing, and all of his good results are coming on clay, and he's doing it consistently. So he's not going to make a whole lot of noise at Indian Wells and Miami, but then when we go to Monte Carlo and Miami, he's going to be right back at it, and he's going to be in the late rounds of some of these tournaments. So it's going to be interesting to see him. This will be our first chance to see him with a good ranking to where he's going to get seeded at some of these tournaments, and also where he's playing in good form. So now a real test to see what he's made out of, see what he can do now that he's going to be given this opportunity to make a run at some of these bigger tournaments and not just doing well at Challenger clay court events or 250 clay court events. We're really going to see him against the big names. And then also with David Ferrer, another one of those guys who's up into the 30s playing well. When Ferrer was 5 and 6 in the world for all those years, what made him so good was the consistency of results he had, always doing well. And I think now that he's gotten a little bit older, we've seen the consistency go away. But he's still capable of winning these 500 events. If he can avoid Nadal, Djokovic, Federer, whoever, if he can avoid those top guys, he's the next best one up there when he's playing his best. So he's certainly still capable of winning these 250 or 500 events. But just because of a little bit more inconsistency in his game now, he has dropped down to number 9. But he's still just as good of a player as he was before.
No, completely agree. Well said across the board with Ferrer, and certainly nobody wants to see match up against them in a draw, because they know that they're going to be pretty worn down even if they get the W against Ferrer going forward in the next match. And shifting gears a little bit, Jared, going to Marseille, France, where we had a final of a pair of Frenchmen, Gilles Simon, another 30-year-old, 30-plus guy. He is 30 years old. He played countryman Gael Monfils, took him out. Simon had he had battles in every match that he played in Marseille, but got the job done. A couple things here. Monfils now falls. He made his 22nd career final, but he's only won 5 of those 22. He's 5-17 now in ATP finals in his career. That's a little surprising, but a little bit of noise from the French journalists about Simon a few weeks ago, and Simon took some exception to that. Can you elaborate on Gilles Simon and what was going on in his world a few weeks ago?
Yeah, he gave an interview in French a couple of weeks ago where he talked about talent and said, if to the French journalists the definition of talent is having good hands and moving gracefully around the court, and he said, look, I don't have those things, but what I do have is good timing, a lot of patience, and he said, to me, that's what talent is, and I have just as much talent as Gay or Tsonga or Monfils. And, he kind of went out there and said, you say these guys have as much talent, but you look at my results are just as good as theirs. And so, why don't you say I have talent? And, I think a little bit for me, it's hard to know exactly what he was saying because it was translated over from French. But I think there is, a difference between talent, skill, and athleticism. I think those are 3 completely different things. And you combine those 3 things, and that's how you determine how good a player is. So, I wouldn't say that Gilles Simon is the most talented player, but he does have an awful lot of skill. He clearly has quite a bit of athleticism with a lot of speed. He moves around the court very well. But, he isn't the most talented guy. And so I don't know exactly, what he meant when he said talented, because obviously he was using a French word there. But yeah, he definitely went at it with those other French journalists and kind of said, give me some credit. Look what I've done with my career.
Very intriguing. I remember one of the first years I covered Cincinnati. This was the August after Simon had made the World Tour finals, and so there were unusually a lot of French journalists there, and so there was a Gilles Simon press conference, and I stuck around for the French version of Simon's press conference, and very interesting. It still stays with me today, Jared. The English or American press conferences, it's just kind of like playing ping pong with the journalists and the player. When the French journalists kind of take over for the French portion, the whole demeanor changes with the player and the interaction with the journalists. In fact, the journalists the questions are so significantly longer. It's not being transcribed, but the player doesn't necessarily answer so quickly. They mull it over a little bit, and it's a long question and it's a long answer. And I still remember Gilles Simon in 2009 talking with the French press. This was a Masters 1000 early on in the tournament and whatnot. But that really left an impression to me, that the cultural differences, if you will, that you mentioned, but also the way the interaction between the press, between the journalist and the player really came across. It was really almost every question, Simon was very introspective and wanted to give an insightful answer and not necessarily rush an answer. So, interesting to see what all comes of that. But Simon, I think, has the most titles out of the other guys that he was compared to by a long shot. The Gasquets, the Monfils, everybody else that he was compared to in French tennis. So all credit to Gilles Simon there. And before we step aside from Marseille, Jared, a couple other guys in that draw had some really nice results. Want to give credit to Simone Bolelli of Italy. Recorded his first ever top 10 win. I think he was 0-35 before he took out Milos Raonic in the second round. Won the third set tiebreaker 7-3 over Raonic. Big win. I mean, this draw really opened up with a lot of seeds falling fairly early in this draw. But big win for Bolelli, and then another result that really stood out in Marseille, Jared. Sergei Stakhovsky's been playing some very solid tennis. He took out Stan Wawrinka, who obviously won a tournament the week before, took Stan out in 3 sets, and then won the first set from the eventual champ Simone in the semifinals. Just want to get your thoughts on Stakhovsky and Bolelli at this time.
Yeah, Bolelli with a nice win over Raonic. I think one of the problems with being a big server, and I've mentioned it before, is that when you get into a lot of tiebreaks, your matches are determined by a few points here or there, or maybe a break point early in the set, and the match is over with all of a sudden. And so Raonic is susceptible to some of these upsets, and he's been very good at avoiding them for a lot of his career. But, occasionally it's not going to go your way, and he loses a very tight 3-set match to Bolelli. So a nice job by Bolelli, really, just to be able to take advantage of those opportunities that he had. And with Stakhovsky, he's playing really well. Took out Rosal in the first round, and he's got a rematch with Rosal this week. I believe they're playing in Dubai in the first round, so we'll see them go at it again. But Stakhovsky was in control there, 6-3, 6-2, and ends up taking out Wawrinka. So great week for him. Also, Chardy beat Gulbis. Gulbis is in quite a sprite now. Obviously, still some injury issues with the arm. And he's got to get this figured out. He's going to start plummeting the rankings soon because almost all of his points to defender between now and Roland Garros, he's in a lot of trouble right now, I think. But I just want to go back to what we were saying about Gilles Simon. Feliciano Lopez sent out a tweet earlier today. He said, "Congrats to Gilles Simon on winning Open 13 in Marseille. Huge talent, this guy," and put huge talent in all caps. So, other players took note of what he said, and, I wonder if it's a little bit of a joke in the locker room now, if they go up to him and say, hey, you got a lot of talent. But obviously other players heard what he said, and so this is becoming a little bit of a thing right now.
Yeah, nice of Lopez to do that to, players giving support to fellow players, and hey, we know how it's done. People haven't been in our shoes, and very, very respectful with respect to Feliciano Lopez and his comments there with Simone and his effort and his result, obviously. And shifting gears, Jared, we had a 250 here in the United States, Delray Beach. Mentioned in past shows, this used to be the Scottsdale tournament that went to Las Vegas and is now in Delray Beach. And another 30-plus-year-old guy, actually a guy in his mid-30s in this case, Ivo Karlovic got the title. He was able to win over Donald Young. Seems like Karlovic has been on tour forever. The 6th career title for him. He was in 4 finals last year, didn't win any of those. So a nice story for Ivo Karlovic. But before we talk about Ivo, I want to talk a little bit about Donald Young. Some very nice wins on his way to the final. Took out Dolgopolov, took out Bernie Tomic, and got to play Karlovic, where he did lose 3-3. But second career final for Donald Young. Made the semis the week before in Memphis. Obviously the final here in Delray Beach. And we'll talk about this a little bit, about a possible Davis Cup nod, if you will, to Donald Young. But let's concentrate, if we will, on Donald Young and what he's done in Memphis, Delray Beach. And interestingly enough, tomorrow he is playing qualifier Ryan Harrison in the tournament here tomorrow. So want to get your thoughts last couple weeks, Donald Young, Memphis, and Delray first off.
Yeah, when Donald Young was a young guy, and he was getting a lot of attention. The guys he was being compared to were Alexander Dolgopolov, Bernard Tomic, and Ryan Harrison. So now he's going to play 3 of them in 4 matches. And how great would that be for him to win all 3 of them? But when you talk about the American hopes of about 5 years ago, Donald Young, Ryan Harrison, Ryan Sweeting were the guys everyone was talking about. Ryan Sweeting won a title early on, but he's kind of crashed out, and his career looks like it's pretty much over with. He's making a little bit of a comeback right now, but nothing in the results suggests that it'll be a successful comeback. Ryan Harrison reached a lot of semifinals, never got through to a final, and now here's Donald Young in his second career final. And he's come out of that slump that he was in a couple years ago. He's really playing some good tennis right now. And, he's making himself an option for Jim Courier as that second singles spot.
Yeah, very much so. With respect to the struggles that John Isner is having, actually, he's 3-3 this year in 2015. Very surprising loss to Matosevic in his first match in Delray Beach. This is somebody who he beat, I believe, 3 times last year. And, I think he went out 4-4 to Matosevic, a very surprising result there. Credit to Matosevic for getting that win, but one has to question, what's going on with John Isner at this point. He's crashed out early now. Memphis, Delray Beach. This is the United States where John Isner plays his best tennis, on hard courts no less, and some question marks there. Before you chime in on Isner, let's talk a little bit about Karlovic. This is a guy who had some serious health issues and concerns just a few years ago. Stuck with it. I think he's 35 years old, 6th career title, and it just seems like this guy can keep going. And he get to a tiebreak, and he's got to like his chances. Sort of like Isner, but Karlovic is getting it done. Want to hear what you have to say about the accomplishment of Ivo Karlovic first of all, and then, as you mentioned, some of the Davis Cup potential questions with respect to who will represent the United States now that John Isner is 3-3.
I said last week that this tournament's a great tournament for the big servers, but then in the first couple of days you have John Isner, Sam Querrey, and Kevin Anderson all going out early. Kevin Anderson is the only one of the 3 to get a win, and then right after that he loses in straight sets to Rennie Liu. So not a good tournament even for Kevin Anderson. But then Ivo Karlovic still finds a way to come through, beating really quality opponents like Steve Johnson, Thanasi Kokkinakis, Dustin Brown, and then eventually Adrian Mannarino and Donald Young, the 2 lefties at the end. And lefties do tend to be tough for the big servers, but he handled them both easily. Those were his 2 best matches, winning 6-3, 6-4, and then 6-3, 6-3. So another guy at 35 years old is incredible, playing the best tennis of his career. He's not far off from his career high ranking, which he set 7 years ago. And he's playing great tennis, played well in Bogota last year, and just things are going well for him, and he's someone that can always pull off an upset still. He's still very dangerous. He's probably not moving as well at 35, but he's I think, a smarter player now than he was 7 years ago, and knowing how to maximize his strength and hide his weaknesses. And his strengths are obvious, it's his serve, and his weaknesses are obvious, it's his return and movement. But he's found a way to make a winning formula with what he has. And at 35, I think that's what makes him a better player than he was at any other point in his career right now.
Agreed, and we've seen it from other guys who've been on the shelf for various reasons. James Blake, who was off for a while, and they come back and they really appreciate the fact of what they do for a living and what they're very good at. And Karlovic, scary situations for him with respect to his health, his life, and comes back, makes 4 finals last year, didn't win any, but gets the win here in the United States against an American. And Ivo Karlovic is somebody who can just keep going and going and going, and very, very nice win for him. And John Isner, very surprising. Obviously, a lot was made when he decided to bring Justin Gimelstob as his coach this year. So far, only 3-3. I think a lot of people expected much, much more from John Isner. He was one of my, teen seeds, if you will, guys who were in the teens seeded at the Australian as sort of a teen dark horse. Obviously didn't do too much at the Australian, and not doing much here in the United States. Let me ask you this, Jared. Jim Courier, as we talked about, has some tough decisions to make. If you're Jim Courier and, looking at what Donald Young has accomplished, looking at what Steve Johnson has brought, looking at Sam Querrey has had some pretty good results, but obviously maybe not necessarily what Young and Johnson have done, and obviously, unfortunately, some mediocrity from John Isner. Who do you go with to play Great Britain and Scotland for the U.S. on singles?
Well, I'll say this. I think what the team will be is the Bryan brothers and John Isner and Querrey. I don't think Courier's going to stray from that. But what I would like to see personally, I'd like to see Steve Johnson in that 2 single spot. As far as Isner goes, I don't think you can take him out of that number 1 spot. I think he's proven himself there. But I would love to see Steve Johnson at that number 2 spot. Then, you have the 4 college guys. I think, Davis Cup is a lot like college tennis with that tennis atmosphere.
Yep.
And, you go with 4 guys on your team that had success in college. I think Steve Johnson and John Isner are 2 of the most successful college players of all time.
Yeah.
And, make a team out of them in the pros. That's like a dream team right there if you're a college tennis fan. You're going to go up against James Ward and Andy Murray and, a decent doubles team, but I think the Bryan brothers are pretty safe. I think Courier can be confident in them. And you need to get 2 wins from singles, and I don't think you're going to get them against Andy Murray. I don't think the Americans have anyone that they can throw out there that really can upset Murray. So you have to go with 2 reliable guys who aren't going to get upset by James Ward, and that's what you're looking for. And I think Steve Johnson and John Isner are the 2 most reliable guys that Jim Courier can put out there and say, okay, James Ward, you got to beat one of them. And I think Steve Johnson and John Isner would both get the job done. I think even Query will get the job done against Ward this time. I don't think he'll lose to him twice in a row in Davis Cup. But I would feel more comfortable with Steve Johnson. But I think either way, the Americans are in good shape right now. It's going to be tough for Great Britain to get a win without having Andy Murray on the court in singles. I think even Andy Murray in doubles isn't going to be able to give the Bryan brothers trouble.
I agree. Good point there. I really liked how you framed that with respect to 4 guys who've played, significant college tennis, John Isner, Steve Johnson, and the Bryan brothers, the team camaraderie. I think that's too often overlooked, taking nothing away from Sam Querrey and some of the other guys who've represented the U.S. in the past. But sure, this is a very the way you presented that, I completely agree. I think Steve Johnson is deserving as well. I do agree with you. I think Querrey, if he is the number 2 player here, would also get the job done against James Ward. I think both guys would, but it didn't happen last time on U.S. soil, and you were there for that in San Diego. So plus the whole wild card element, if you will, of the Davis Cup experience. We've seen some very unusual events transpire in Davis Cup, some shocking upsets, and guys playing absolutely out of their mind to get the job done. So, but then again, that could be Steve Johnson who's bringing that as well, representing the U.S. And we talked about Rio, the 500 there with Nadal, also Marseille, Gilles Simon getting the win, Delray Beach we just wrapped up. Any other thoughts on any of those 3 tournaments or somebody that we necessarily didn't talk too much about that stands out in your mind this week, Jared?
Just a great week overall for the young guys with Coric getting a win, Thanasi Kokkinakis, and Andrei Rublev was the one that really stuck out to me. He beat Duty Staley, who's been in form. But I especially want to bring up Yoshihito Nishioka, the 19-year-old from Japan. He's now ranked 145 in the world, new career high ranking. He got 2 wins on the ATP World Tour, his first 2 wins of his career at that level, and 2 solid wins at that, beating Matosevic in the second one, who had just come off his win against John Isner and really beat down Matosevic. He's a 5'7" lefty, and the way he strikes the ball, it's fun to watch. It's very easy on the eyes. A very talented player, only 19 years old, and I'm excited to see more out of him. He's been a little bit under the radar. I mean, obviously he's gained attention as a teenager, ranked in the top 150 of the world, but probably not as much as Coric, Zverev, and Kyrgios, but he's right up there with those guys. I think of him as one of the top teenagers, and he proved it again with what he did in Delray Beach this week. So someone to keep an eye on.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I want to give one more shout-out to a guy. You see his name in the draw, especially more in European tournaments than here in the U.S., but he has quietly crept up to a career high of number 57 in the world. He reached the semis last week in Rio de Janeiro before losing to eventual champ David Ferrer. Andreas Hayder-Maurer of Austria, number 57 in the world. And Jared, between now and the beginning of Roland Garros, this is somebody who only has 96 points to defend for his ranking, and he's 57, so he plays very well on clay. Took out Robredo in the second round in Rio, and you have guys who are feeling it, who are playing very well, almost like a Cuevas. And here's somebody else that might not necessarily have 3 titles like Cuevas, but he's feeling it, he's bringing it, and as we know, it's all about momentum, and you never know what might be able to happen. He actually lost the first set to Ferrer in the semifinals, 5-7. So just want to, as you mentioned, the youngster from Japan, want to bring up 27-year-old Hayder-Maurer of Austria, somebody that, again, tennis aficionados see his name in the draw, don't necessarily know too much about him. I even looked at some of his Masters 1000 results. He's played Cincinnati a grand total of once. He lost in qualifying first round that one time. He's only played Indian Wells a grand total of once and lost qualifying first round as well. So, with that kind of ranking, if he's able to climb a little higher, obviously he'll think better about coming to play the Masters 1000s in North America to at least compete. And with that, Jared, we're going to come up on a break. We've got, obviously, 3 tournaments going on this week as well. We are in Dubai, and we are in Acapulco this week, and we're going to come back and talk about these tournaments when we come back on Passing Shots on the Pro 10 Radio Network right after this.
Hey, Thirst, can I try out a few Coke Summer sound effects on you? Cool. You okay with this? And this? And what about this? Gotcha there, Thirst. That wasn't sound effects. That was a Coke. I'm no longer thirsty. You're so out of here. Coca-Cola. Open happiness.
Little Caesars, home of the $5 hot and ready pepperoni pizza, now has a deep, deep dish pizza with 8 crispy caramelized corner slices and even more cheese and pepperoni. So head on down and grab a large for just $8 and tell them Alan Varner sent you. They won't know who that is, but as a voice actor, I'm always trying to get my name out there. Check me out at alandoesvoices.com. That's ALAN doesvoices.com. But first, get the new deep, deep dish pizza. It's hot and ready every day from 4 to 8 p.m. for just $8, only at Little Caesars.
Pizza.
At participating locations plus tax.
Hi, this is Dick Gould. You're listening to the Pro 10 Radio Network.
And welcome back to Passing Shots on the Pro 10 Radio Network. Pete Zebron of Tennis Acumen and Jared Pine of the Second Serve. And Jared, we left the break coming back with action this week. We're going to start talking about the 500 tournament in Dubai. A couple of, actually the top 2 players in the ATP circuit are in action this week. First time they've played in quite a while, that being Novak Djokovic, who's going to play Vasek Pospisil tomorrow. And today we had Roger Federer taking on Mikhail Yuzhny. They met for the 16th time today, and Federer just drummed Yuzhny 6-3, 6-1. Maybe a little bit of rust early on from Fed just as he got out of the blocks, but he corrected at will and took care of Yuzhny. We're going to talk about those guys as well as some very intriguing first-round matchups, but let's first start talking about Roger Federer, his win today, and Djokovic in his matchup against Pospisil tomorrow. Your thoughts?
Yeah, obviously you look at the draw in Dubai, and it's a lot different than what's going on in Acapulco. Even though they're both 250s, Acapulco closer to the big upcoming tournament in Indian Wells, you would think that would be the one that gets the bigger draw, but obviously bigger prize money in Dubai, bigger appearance fees, and they go out and they get the best players. You have Djokovic, Murray, Federer, and Berdych as your top 4 seeds there. That's just an incredible draw for a 250. And so that's
it's actually a 500. Dubai and Acapulco are 500s. Yeah.
Excuse me. Yeah, that's okay. But yeah, obviously 4 really good players there, and when we get to the semifinals and later rounds, that's going to be exciting and already have some results in there. We mentioned Gulbis earlier. He's already out, not too surprisingly. But, yeah, it's going to be a fun tournament. Federer already got through Usny, and Djokovic coming up on Pospisil in a bit. That'll be a fun one. I believe it's being played tomorrow night.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and Bertus Gulbis, 5 losses to start 2015, actually 7 in a row if we go back to last year. Jared, this is somebody who obviously took Federer out at Roland Garros, and a match or two later, he was asked about his play, and he said at that point in early June at Roland Garros that he wants to go all the way to number 1 in the world. And when you're playing very well in a major, when you take out a legend like Roger Federer, and you're feeling it. We talked about momentum with guys like Cuevas and Hader Maurer and whatnot, but Gulbis was obviously feeling it. For Ernest Gulbis to say he wanted to be number 1 in the world, that certainly raised some eyebrows, and did very well at Roland Garros last year, but really hasn't done much of anything since his run at Roland Garros. We talked about some arm issues with Gulbis. This is, before we came on air, you were talking about this is something that he needs to correct very, very soon. What does Gulbis do at this point in time?
I think he needs to seriously consider stepping away from the tour and getting some rehab, whatever that means. I don't know the specifics of his injury, obviously, but going out there and losing the first round week after week isn't helping him. He's not playing the form of someone ranked inside the top 100 right now. And, it seems like he's going out there because he knows he can get a seed, and he's basically just hoping for an easy draw and get a couple wins to keep his ranking alive while he tries to sort this arm issue out. But, I think he's better off, returning to Latvia or, wherever that may be for him to get some rehab and get this issue figured out, because continuing to play like this, he's not doing himself any favors.
A great point. I completely agree, and sometimes that's what it takes, step aside from the tour, even though we're sort of in the thick of things. But, I completely agree. You can't show up even though you have a seed and hope for a gimme draw, if you will, because as we know, there are no gimmies. And somebody like a Dennis Istomin who took care of Gulbis today, that's not exactly somebody you want to match up with if you're not particularly playing well. There was another interesting result today. Went 3 sets. Gasquet took out Seppi. Pretty interesting match there. But I want to get your thoughts on a few more first-round matches in the Dubai 500. First off, let's take us through the Dominic Thiem Bautista Agut matchup we're going to see in round 1.
Yeah, Bautista Agut loves to play a very flat ball, not like Spaniards as far as that goes. And Dubai historically has been a very fast, hard court, which is why last year we saw Federer come out there serving and volleying Djokovic off the court, and Federer was very successful at that because of the speed of the court. And so I think with Bautista Agut's flat ground strokes, that's going to be to the advantage of him, whereas Thiem tends to prefer the slower courts. Give him some time to run around his backhand. That's going to be taken away, and Bautista Agut's going to be able to pick on that one-handed backhand of Thiem and just fire some low flat balls right at it. And I think that's going to be tough for Thiem to handle. So I see Bautista Agut getting through that one there.
Yeah, I would agree. I like your call there, and for those reasons, again, Thiem liking the slower courts. And actually, the winner of that match is going to get Gasquet, who we talked just took out Seppi. So, nice first round match, Bautista Agut Thiem, and even a nicer second round match. The winner of that getting Gasquet, and talked about Federer already getting through Yuzhny today. Roger Federer is going to await the winner of Verdasco and Garcia Lopez. Verdasco is always a threat. We still always remember his very nice run at the Australian Open in the semis when he played that long marathon match against Nadal. But Verdasco, Garcia Lopez, winner gets Federer. Who do you like in that match?
I'd pick Garcia Lopez to get through that one just based on form. I think matchup-wise is probably a little bit better for Verdasco, and as I mentioned, the fast courts, I think that's probably also an advantage to Verdasco. But Garcia Lopez is playing the best tennis of his career right now, and I think he's going to be tough to stop. So I picked Garcia Lopez to get through that one.
Okay, yep. I'm going to go with Verdasco. I just, with all due respect to what you said about Garcia Lopez playing exceptional tennis at this point in time, I've just a gut feel on this one. Nothing more than that with Verdasco getting through that one. So going to disagree with you on that. We'll look forward to seeing how those guys match up tomorrow. An intriguing match here on the bottom half. Federer's half of the draw. And number 3 seed Andy Murray, who's playing very good tennis as well, playing against somebody who's also very hot at this point in time. He's going to play Gilles Mueller of Luxembourg, who we've talked about quite a bit on this show the last few weeks. And Murray Mueller, again, Mueller bringing a very serious game into this match. I just think at this point in time, Andy Murray is all business, and he's healthy. He's playing very, very well. Can beat just about anybody in the field in the ATP. I think he's going to get through in straights. The winner of this match gets João Sousa, who took out the wild card from Ireland, James McGee. Jared, what's going to happen in Murray Mueller tomorrow?
I got Murray going through this one, but hard to overlook what Mueller's doing. He's played some beautiful tennis in the last 12 months, really 11 months. So he is about 1 month left now where he doesn't have a ton to defend before he starts defending some of these points that he racked up at the Challengers. He really started doing well with that result in Guadalajara in the last week of March last year. So he has a couple weeks now, and then Indian Wells where he can really start building up his ranking. He's one spot below his career high, which he achieved last week of 34. Maybe he gets into that top 32 here pretty soon, and we could see him seated in Indian Wells or Miami. But I liked what you said about Murray being all business. I think you're absolutely right there, and I think he's going to get through this one. He knows how to handle the lefty serve. I think the one issue Murray has with lefties is his own second serve. He struggles to be able to get to their backhand. But Mueller, not a great returner as it is. I don't think he's going to be able to take advantage of that with Murray. And so as long as Murray takes care of his own serve, he's going to get the break, and he should be fine in this one, I think.
Yeah, I would agree. And, if the seeds hold true here, we're looking at a very intriguing Roger Federer, Andy Murray semifinal, and most likely the winner would get Djokovic on the top half. So this is a 500 tournament in February, and we're talking about some obviously 3 of the big 4 here going at it, and some guys are probably going to meet here in the semifinals. And one other matchup that really sort of jumps out at the tennis aficionados in the first round of this tournament, Jared, David Goffin, who's seeded 8th, who, as we know, has played very well, especially the second half of last year, playing someone who's really turned up the volume already in 2015, Marcos Baghdatis, who got a wild card into this tournament. Goffin and Baghdatis, and I'm probably about 52-48 in favor of Goffin in this one. I just think he's more complete at this point. Marcos is definitely on the rise, but I think Goffin has, at least for the last year or so, has better results, and that's what I'm banking on for this one. How about you?
Yeah, I went with Goffin too, but I like what you said. It's a complete toss-up here. The last few months, Baghdatis has been trending up. Goffin's been trending down a little bit. But just over the whole last year, Goffin's had some incredible results. These are 2 of the best shot makers on tour right now, in my opinion. And, you're going to put them on a fast court. This is going to be a fun-to-watch tennis match, and there's going to be some good highlights that come out of this one. And, I'm not horribly confident in my Goffin pick. I could easily see Baghdatis coming through this one. So that's definitely a match to keep your eye on. It's probably going to go the distance and come down to the last point.
Yeah, good. Yeah, exactly right. Very intriguing. I could see a third set breaker deciding this one as well. And one other match, I just want to bring this up just for a different angle. Berdych is playing Chardy, and you look at what Berdych has done this year, and he lost in the finals of Doha, got to the semis, he lost to the finals in Doha to Ferrer, got to the semis of Australian Open, obviously won his first 16 sets of that tournament before going out to Murray in the semis. Got to the final in Rotterdam, where he was just playing unbelievable tennis and lost in the final to Stan Wawrinka. So 3 tournaments, 2 finals, and a semi of a major. And, I guess, Chardy is somebody who can give you problems. I'm just wondering if there isn't just a twinge of disappointment with Berdych and the fact that he's not being able to get a W this year on tour. He is a pro. He certainly brings it. I think Chardy might be able to sneak out a set here, but I'm going to go with Berdych in 3. How about you?
Yeah, I got Berdych going through this one as well. I like what you said about him consistently making it to the end of these tournaments, but he has had a problem in his career where he struggles in those semifinals and finals matches. We mentioned Monfils's record in finals. Berdych isn't any more impressive in finals, but his ability to consistently get to the semifinals and finals is very impressive, and so you absolutely expect him to get through some of these early matches against Chardy and maybe Pouille or Bolelli down the line.
Yeah, good point. And another 500 going on this week. Not quite the names that Dubai has, but this is a 500 level tournament in Acapulco. They switched a couple of years ago, Jared, to hard courts away from the clay. And interestingly enough, first off, the number 1 seed is Kei Nishikori, but we have 3 guys in this draw that won titles on Sunday, and that is David Ferrer, Ivo Karlovic, and should also mention that Victor Estrella Burgos won a challenger tournament. He is in the Acapulco field as well. We've got some pretty interesting first-round matches. I want to get your thoughts on them. First off, Estrella Burgos playing Wendy Liu, who we talked about earlier in the show, had a very nice win last week. Your thoughts, first off, on that first-round matchup between Victor Estrella Burgos and Wendy Liu.
Yeah, well, it's been said before, what separates the Big Four from the rest of tennis is that when they go out and win a title, they're back in it the very next week competing for another title. And, I think for these guys, Ferrer, Karlovic, and Estrella Burgos, that's going to be a challenge. So right after you have that high of winning a title, now you got to go back and grind it out all over again, starting from round 1. And so I got Wendy Liu upsetting Estrella Burgos in the first round, partially because also this is on hard courts where Liu has been playing well of late, and Estrella Burgos has been on the clay all this time. That's a tough transition to make. I think any player would tell you that going from clay to hard is very difficult. And so I got Liu getting through that one.
Yeah, good call. I like that. The clay to hard surface. Obviously, he's coming from playing a challenger, Estrella Burgos, to playing a 500 as well. But Liu's won his share of challengers in his career as well. But that was years ago. I like that point that you made there. And another one, another first rounder that really jumps out. And these are 2 guys that have really been playing well of late. I talked about Bernie Tomic, going out to Donald Young last week, and he's been playing well, though. And another guy that you had talked about quite a bit last week, Adrien Manarino of France. Tomic, Manarino matching up in the first round, and I'm liking Tomic here. I think he's still feeling stung in a good way, if you will, for not taking out Donald Young last week in Delray, and I think it's going to be a little bit more determined Bernie Tomic, and I think that's going to be the difference here. Your thoughts?
Yeah, I'm with you there. I'm picking Tomic, and I think, you could argue that Acapulco is going to be more exciting than Dubai, even though you don't have the name recognition. I'd say to some of these top-seeded players in Acapulco, 500 points means a lot more to them than it does to Djokovic, Federer, and Murray. And so we're going to see some great matches here, and Tomic and Manarino is a great example of that. 2 guys who have been hot this year and looking to continue it. So kind of a battle of 2 guys really in form. That's going to be a fun one to watch. But I got Tomic coming through it. I think it's 2 very crafty players, and it's tough to be more crafty than Bernard Tomic. I think that's going to be a tough matchup for Manarino. I think Tomic loves playing some of these eclectic guys and taking advantage of that. And he kind of has a little bit of a win-ugly attitude, and it might be ugly match at times, have some bizarre points, and Tomic's creativity is going to pull him through, I think.
Yeah, I agree with you there. And anything else jump out at you with respect to the draw in Acapulco? You mentioned, it doesn't necessarily have all the names that the other 500 does in Dubai, but yet we're going to see some very intriguing tennis. Anything that we didn't discuss that you see in Acapulco that might be pretty interesting there?
Well, just a little while ago during our show, Kevin Anderson got through his first round against Dustin Brown, and looks like he's probably going to play against Steve Johnson. It'll be the third time at least that they've met this year. I mentioned that Johnson's a great college tennis player. So was Kevin Anderson in his time with Illinois, a very successful player there. So seeing two great college players from different generations now getting to meet each other, another one of those dream matchups for college tennis fans. And, it's Anderson has had Johnson's number of late, but they've been tight matches, and it's so tough to beat the same player over and over in tight matches. It is a pretty tough draw for Kevin Anderson. He already got through Dustin Brown, but now that was a tough one. Now he has to go through Steve Johnson, potentially Victor Troitsky, who's been playing well. Last couple of weeks had some disappointing results, but he's still playing well overall. And if he gets through all that, he plays Nishikori. And Kevin Anderson's coming into this tournament defending 300 points, finalist points. And, he's someone, his name's been tossed around as someone who could potentially break into the top 10. If he wants to do that, he needs to have a good result here this week. So Kevin Anderson's kind of the guy to watch, I think, especially after a disappointing result last week. Had some time to get to Acapulco early and really get himself ready. So I want to see what he can do here.
Well put with respect to the, guys have different mentalities going into tournaments when they're defending points. This is, obviously it's difficult to win a tournament, let alone defend that. But, this is something that we saw Nishikori do for the third time in Memphis last week as well. So, Anderson is very well aware of the fact that he's got all those points to defend, and you mentioned finals points. And so I think you were much like I said about Tomic being very determined in his match, his first-round match. We're going to have a very determined Kevin Anderson this week in Acapulco. And as you mentioned, earlier than expected exit last week, got down there, very used to conditions, dialed in. Good call on Kevin Anderson, and look forward to that match against Johnson. And Jared, very unusual. We talked about Rafael Nadal to open up the show with respect to his time in Rio last week. Who would have ever thought that, we have 3 ATP tournaments going on in a week, and the third and last tournament that we're going to talk about is one that involves Rafael Nadal. But here we are. Granted, Dubai and Acapulco are 500 tournaments. Nadal playing a 250 this week in Buenos Aires, Argentina, and he is the number 1 seed. A couple interesting storylines here. He could have a rematch in the semifinals with Fabio Fognini, where he lost to Fognini last week. That could happen. Could very well happen. Even if he gets through that, he would have a matchup in the final against Pablo Cuevas, who he played in the quarters in Rio last week. Obviously, that was a tight match as well. But obviously, 2 500s going on. You look at the draw in Buenos Aires, a lot of Argentine flags, if you will, a lot of Argentine players getting through qualifying, wild-carded and whatnot. But top 4 seeds, 1 Nadal, 2 Robredo, 3 Cuevas, and 4 Fognini. Want to get your overall thoughts, opinions on this tournament, and also we're going to talk about Almagro a little bit, and obviously a very accomplished clay court player that just can't seem to get past Cuevas. But first off, your thoughts on Nadal in his potential rebound this week in Buenos Aires.
Yeah, Nadal also could meet Carreño Busta again. Met him last week. They could meet in the second round. Looks like he also might have played Bellucci, but Bellucci just lost to Lorenzi this morning. I said that the rematch with Fognini wouldn't happen. I don't think Fognini's going to be ready on a short turnaround to perform well again. I picked Vesely to get through the semifinals. We saw him win his first title of his career early on this season. Hasn't backed that up, but he has a nice draw. He's playing Blasrola in the first round. He's in a little bit of a slump. Then he gets the winner of 2 qualifiers. So you look at that, that's probably going to be an easy win for him. And then he's going to face, Berlocq, Schwartzman, or Fognini most likely. And so I like Veseli's chances to get to the semifinals. I think that'd be fun to see the young guy take on Nadal in a semifinal on clay. Is it all right if I change directions here a little bit? There's a story coming out that I want to get into. Juan Jose Moro, an Argentine journalist, he's there in the tournament right now at Buenos Aires. Obviously, you have Davis Cup coming up in a week. And so he was interviewing Juan Monaco, talking about Delpo, who's been out with injuries. And Monaco said this. He said in Spanish, mi relación con él es nula. Es más, yo no hablo con él. Basically saying, I have no relationship with Del Potro. I never talked to him, and kind of being pretty public about it, saying, we're not friends. We don't like each other. He says quite a bit here. I've been trying to read it during the podcast. But he says, I have respect for him. I accept him, and I hope that he plays. That's what's best for our country. I hope that he plays. But I'm not going to talk to him. We're basically going to talk through our captain, and that's how it's going to happen. We're going to find a way to win together, but we don't like each other, and we're not going to talk to each other. So very interesting. I'm going to try to read the rest of it later on, but this is just coming out now. Obviously, not a big secret that there's been these kind of problems going on in Argentina with Nalbandian, Juan Ignacio Chela, Juan Martín del Potro, and Juan Monaco. Those four guys, it seems like they're always butting heads, and it's coming to the surface here again. So this is going to be interesting to see what happens, a week before Davis Cup. This is coming out. So a story to follow in the upcoming days.
Yeah, for sure. And you mentioned that, and Argentina. I mean, David Nalbandian. It seemed like, obviously he always answered the bell for Davis Cup. I mean, he'd even skip a major if he needed to get himself mentally and physically prepared to play Davis Cup for Argentina. So, that's. But you talked about that, and I guess the first thing that came into my mind when you were sharing that, Jared, was there were obviously some issues with Leighton Hewitt and Bernie Tomic for Australia, and I do remember they paired to play Davis Cup doubles together, put aside their differences to put the gear on for Australia and played doubles together when you thought that was 179 degrees apart from each other. So sure, we've got an ATP tournament going on in Argentina this week. Nadal is there, and then for Monaco to come out and say all this with respect to Delpo. Very interesting. They are playing host to the Brazilian squad, which in itself should be an interesting tie. Two South American nations going at it in Davis Cup. But, wow, thanks for bringing that to our attention. Obviously, spotlight all of a sudden might shift from the 500s in Dubai and Acapulco down to Buenos Aires with respect to Davis Cup taking the upper hand away from this tournament. Very, very interesting, very intriguing. And just one other question with respect to a player in this draw, Jared. Nicolas Almagro, obviously a very, very solid player who's had some injuries of late, obviously has plummeted in the rankings due to that. But he's had some hard luck so far this year. He has played Pablo Cuevas already 3 times. We're not even out of February. Played him 3 times, has lost all 3 times. Fortunately for him, they're in opposite halves of this particular draw. He opens with number 7 seed Pablo Andujar. But, Almagro is a very, very seasoned player. Obviously, maybe something going on with the matchup against Cuevas, but I want to get your thoughts on what we might see from Almagro in 2015 overall.
Yeah, I'm looking at the points he has to defend right now. The last time he'll defend points is Barcelona, where he was a semifinalist last year after beating Nadal in the quarterfinals. A great event there. But, after that, he's going to have very little to his name as far as ranking points. Also a tough draw in the Australian Open, losing to Corey in the first round. So following Barcelona, it's pretty tough for him to get into these tournaments. He's probably going to get a wild card in his home country's tournament in Madrid. But after that, he's going to have to start relying on protected ranking So it's good to see that for Buenos Aires, he didn't need to use the protected ranking. He got in directly. You get 8 of them, so he got to save that up. I believe he's used 1 or 2 already. So he has some saved up, and I think he'll be okay in the long run. But when you get a draw like this, he's got to get a couple rounds, get some wins over Andahar, potentially Ramos or Ceballos. Not an easy draw, but I could see him getting through there to the quarterfinals, set up a quarterfinal against Robredo. He needs to do that because he's not going to be able to rely on the protected ranking forever. And while he's on clay, where he plays his best, that's where he needs to start building up his ranking. So big stuff for him coming up here. Obviously a very good player. If he can get his ranking back up, we'll start seeing him more often, I think.
Yeah, I agree completely. Doesn't want to use those protected rankings unless he has to. Like you mentioned, got in direct entry here. Obviously, again, 2 other larger tournaments going on, points elsewhere. But you get the feeling he would have been playing this one anyway, with respect to the fact that it's in a Latin American country and it's on clay. So, yeah. And, Jared, before we wrap up tonight, want to just see if you had anything to chime in on with respect to last week's action or anything that we didn't really discuss that's happening this week outside of, again, thanks again for sharing the Davis Cup drama coming out of Argentina. But anything in these draws or any other players that are on the rise that we necessarily didn't talk about here, or any of the youngsters that we like to mention throughout the broadcast as well?
Yeah, we got a little bit into mentioning what happened with Nadal and Bernardes in Rio. Nadal said to Bernardes, I'm serious right now. I never want to be umpired by you ever again. Was very emphatic about it. Said over and over, I'm being serious right now. I don't like you. I don't want you umpiring my matches. And now I believe Bernardes is going to be in Buenos Aires. So I'm interested to see if the ATP is going to respect Nadal's wish and get him a different chair umpire, or if he's going to have Bernardes, because he has had issues with Bernardes before. I'm sure he wasn't thrilled to see, even when the match began, that he was going to be umpired by Bernardes. So see now if the ATP is listening to what Nadal's saying. He obviously has a strong impact. And when he said that he didn't like how the clay was blue in Madrid, they changed it back to red. So kind of what Nadal says he gets. And we'll see if this is another case of that, if he gets umpired by Bernardes or not.
Yeah, good point. I've seen Fabio Fognini say similar things to Cedric Mourier. Obviously, I've continued to see Mourier officiate Fognini matches. So it's not like Fognini said, I don't ever want you again. He said other choice words, but directly to Mourier. But like you said, obviously I think Bernardes is going to be there. I think you said he is there. So interesting to see whom the ATP puts in the chair for Nadal's matches. But in my opinion, Carlos Bernardes was simply following the rule book, and a player having not feeling well physically. Obviously, Nadal starting his match in the morning against Cuevas, a niggle here or there, and you're not a happy camper, especially when you're not playing to the best of your ability. And so I'm hoping that the two can break bread together, if you will, and it's just a situation where it was unfortunate scenario there. But I think in my opinion, Carlos Bernardes was simply doing his job as a chair official there, and a lot surprised by how Nadal carried on there.
Yeah, great point. I absolutely agree. I think Bernardes did the right thing, and great points you make there about that.
Yeah. Any other points before we sign off for this week, Jared?
No, I'm just excited for this week to get going. Then we got Davis Cup going on, and then Indian Wells, and you really get into the time of the season where every match is a lot of points at stakes. We have several 1,000s going on in the span of just a few months, all on the road to Roland Garros. So very exciting stuff in tennis, and let's enjoy it.
I completely agree, and a couple things to watch. Obviously, even though this is a 250, Rafael Nadal, I think I read somewhere that if the right things happen or don't happen, Nishikori could actually be number 4 next week if the right scenarios take place. So who would have ever thought that would be possible? But again, Rafael Nadal has boatloads of points to defend between now and the conclusion of Roland Garros. So all eyes are on him. Murray has already supplanted him at number 3, and Murray has a few points to defend. But absolutely, 2 500s going on this week. Dubai, we mentioned the names there. Acapulco, some very interesting, intriguing matchups in Acapulco, and obviously Rafael Nadal, all eyes will be on him to see if he's able to rebound and ricochet back into the player that we all know he is in Buenos Aires. So on behalf of Jared Pine, this is Pete Zebron saying good night, God bless, another edition of Passing Shots on the Pro 10 Radio Network. We'll see you next Monday. Good night.